Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back. I'm glad you guys are here today. This is going to be my third video on law, and I do have more to say about this subject, but I feel that I need to talk about other things. So maybe in the future I'll come back to the subject because it is important. But our topic today is basically law, morality, character, and leadership. But I want to emphasize law. We don't really think about it much, but law is the most important component in life because it forms the foundation of everything, relationships, life, etc. Law is also the source of values. It defines values. It interprets values. So when we talk about law, morality, character, and leadership, we have to consider the relationship between these four things. I want to begin with a few statements about leadership and character. So write this down, please. The distinguishing mark of leadership is his or her character. That's the distinguishing mark because it is character that makes people trust you. You cannot buy trust. You cannot demand trust. Trust is given freely by other people in response to character. So trustworthiness is the currency of leadership. Trust is also the product of stability. If I was to give you a definition of trust, it would be an equation, and it would look like test over time equals trust, like an algebra equation. You cannot trust anything or anyone that has not been tested over a period of time. This is why, for example, people would pay $10,000+ for a Rolex watch. Not because they want to buy an instrument to tell time. You can buy a Casio G-Shock for $100 to tell time. It's interesting because when you buy a Rolex, you're not buying time. You are buying trust because this product has been tested before they released it to the market. When I was given a Rolex, I bought it at a drastically discounted price. It was basically given to me some years ago. There was this book in the box. And it was about, I don't know, an inch thick, maybe 2 inches thick. And I thought to myself, why would someone write this book on a watch? And then I opened it and I read it. I was curious. And I saw a photograph of an elephant standing on the Rolex. Then I saw another photograph with a Rolex in fire. Then I saw another photograph of the Rolex underwater. Then the Rolex was frozen in a block of ice. And suddenly I began to realize that this is not just a watch. This is an instrument that has been tested over a long period of time. When you keep reading the book, towards the end there is a page that says guaranteed for life. That means you will never again have to buy a watch. You can trust this watch until you die. Are there leaders you can trust forever? Have they been tested? Leaders need longevity. Longevity and trust is a product of stability and durability. That's trust. Make a note of this, please. That means leaders must be fixed, predictable, and stable, like a statue. Very interesting. The word statue and statute are derived from the same root word meaning to stand. Leaders must be like statues in their principles and morals, period. They do not move from them. So let's talk about how law relates to this. I'm going to give you a lot of information quickly, so please be careful, pause, rewind if you need to. Most of us never thought about the power of law in forming our values and our character. Law is the foundation of creation. All of my assessments in life, my brief time on earth, I have come to the conclusion that everything runs on law. Law is inherent in creation. It is the glue that holds the universe together. As a matter of fact, everything exists by law and on law. We have an estimated 2 trillion galaxies that have been identified by the astronomers, and they still have not yet found the end of the universe. And this massive divine created structure that we call the universe, the physical one, is so orderly that you can literally calculate the movement of a rocket from Earth to Mars. Why? You can predict that every single component in the universe and in space is working on a timing. If there was no order in space, you could not send a rocket to the moon or to Mars. Okay, there are laws built into creation. Everything exists for law. Write this down, please. Everything that was created was designed to function by law. That's why laws protect products. When you buy a product, it used to be, not so much anymore, but when you would open the box, you wouldn't see the product first. They hide it under a book, and that book is called the manual. It is simply a book of laws. And that book is a book we don't normally read completely. That's why we have a cell phone that has 3,000 functions on it and we know maybe 10. Think about it. Why? Because you have not read the inherent built-in laws that the product came with from the manufacturer. How do most Christians live? So you are not benefiting from the investment because you violate the laws. Law is the key to life. Now, people think that when you are free from law. This is a struggle in the world today. Everybody wants to be free. Free from what? We really want to be free from law, but that's impossible. And any attempt to do so creates destruction. Let's talk about that. The greatest ideal of nations in the world today is freedom. And I am not sure that is the best idea. If you study all the so-called free nations or the Western democracies, freedom has become their number one ideal. They want to be free. Well, here's the problem. Freedom without law is anarchy. No one is ever free. It's actually impossible to be completely free and just do whatever you want. It's like a fish saying, I am tired of water. I am out of here. This water is restricting me. I hate the fact that I cannot leave this pond. So on Monday, I'm going to jump out of this water and I'm going to set myself free. The problem with the fish is water is a law. And there are some laws you didn't create. The fish did not decide to live in water. Somebody else decided that. That's called divine law. Whenever you attempt to violate a law that was inherent in creation, you die. So all these people marching in our countries with placards demanding their rights to do what? They want to be free from laws. For example, the law of being a male or a female. I mean, you can demand your rights all you want, but the problem is maleness, femaleness, gender is not a product of human legislation. You didn't choose to be a male, okay? You were born a male, period. And now you can have some surgery and adjust some parts, but it doesn't change the law. You are always stuck with law. Write this down, please. Laws protect freedom. That's kind of a paradox. Laws do what? Laws protect freedom. You cannot be free without law, and that's a paradox. Therefore, laws protect freedom from anarchy. I want to talk about how this relates to a nation, because we got a lot of problems in America, and a lot of nations are struggling. There are different ways to define a nation, but I want to give you a kind of a comprehensive and simple one. Basically, a nation is a community of people committed to a common heritage. They should have one language. They relate to a certain geographical area or landmass. They are submitted to a common set of laws or jurisdiction or jurisprudence. They commit to the same ideals, values, and governance, and they are usually submitted to one deity. And this is why that's important, because there has to be a source for your law you cannot change when you want. The law needs authority. For example, if I created a law that says everyone in America has to pay me $10 a month in tax, if there's no authority to back up that law, the law is useless. When God was creating the nation of Israel, for example, the first thing he gave them was law, not power. But if you study the laws he gave them, the first law was about him. Why? Because all true law must have a source that is greater than you. If you create the laws that you live by, you can adjust them whenever you want. And that's what we're doing right now. And we call it constitutional reform. In other words, if you decide that marriage is between a man and a woman. If you think you decided that, then if you get tired of that, you can adjust it. But if the source of that law is greater than you cannot just decide to adjust it. How does this relate to order in a country? Write this down, please. The opposite of law is disorder. Sounds simple. And the key to life is order. And the source of order is law. And the ultimate law of life, the ultimate law that we have, is law. Why? Because there's nothing more important in life than law. And I'm going to prove that to you. It's interesting because there are some religious people who focus primarily on grace. I caution you. Grace is never freedom from law. It might be freedom from rituals, but not law. Law protects you. It sustains you. It preserves. It guards. It protects. It promotes life. These are important to understand. If a fish stays in water, it lives. As long as it keeps submitting to water, it guarantees its life. Laws promote life. Therefore, without law, there is no definition in life. We define life through laws. The reason why a seed does not need prayer when you put it in the ground is because when you know the law, you don't need to pray. And now the religious people are upset with me, but it's fine. I can feel them looking at me. I'll speak on prayer soon and what it really means and how to do it correctly. But look, God designed the seed to operate by certain laws. The laws are you put the seed in soil, you give it some moisture, you let there be some sunlight with some ultraviolet rays to ignite the chlorophyll, and the plant grows out by itself. So you don't need to pray. You just submit the seed to the laws and the tree comes out by itself. Write this down, please. Laws guarantee success. I don't think our governments themselves really understand law. And I say that with some authority because I've been listening to a lot of them speak, and you can clearly see that they use politics to violate law. You are here to stop that from happening. In whatever country you live in, you must go back and become the government. You never thought of running for government or city council. Go back and consider it. The problem with our leaders is that leaders tamper with legislation. Legislation is a creation of laws. Make a note of this. The foundation of all nations is law. Nations are built on law. They are sustained by law, and the quality of life in a nation is determined by law. Therefore, life is protected by law because all societies must adhere to law if there's going to be a common unity. We call that a community. A community is sustained and produced by law. What makes a community is not a government. It is law. There are many civilizations throughout the world, throughout history, and even still today that do not have a formal type of government. Yet the people in them live successfully due to adherence to law. This is why, even though we may not accept it in application, at least we admit that law is the source of our national identity. And I'm getting at something here, so stay with me. So let's talk about law and the priority placed in creation by the Creator. The first thing God gave Moses for national development was law, not power. And he gave them these 10 specific laws. Secondly, he gave it to Moses because, write this down please, laws create values. When someone creates a law, what they've done is they've told you what's important. When you buy a new electronic device, let's say an iron, okay, and you read through the book of laws in the manual, an iron to iron your clothes, you will see this law in this book that says something like, do not operate near water. Now, that's a law the manufacturer gave you from the beginning. What the manufacturer is saying is that this is valuable, to not operate near water. There's value here. Laws produce value. We have this concept we call traditional values. Have you guys ever heard that term before? Traditional values are important. Now, this is also important to write down. Traditional values are laws we trade to generations. Let me explain that. The word trade is the foundation for the word tradition. which means to hand over or hand down. A tradition is a component of law that you keep trading to the next generations. These are not laws that you can decide to tamper with. The original laws are permanent, so you keep trading them. This is what you teach your children and your children's children. So the argument, if you listen carefully to most countries today, is, are we losing our traditional values? Why? Because law creates value. The things that are valuable usually have a law attached to them, like do not steal. This means that we value protecting private property. Thou shalt not lie or bear false witness. That means we value honesty and truth. Every law has a value, and there are some laws you have to trade from generation to generation. Your children must learn the permanent laws of life. Now, I didn't say rituals, because sometimes rituals are historically experiential. Okay, sometimes circumstances may force the creation of a ritual or a custom, but law is different. A true law is a principle you can't touch. It touches you. You cannot break true law, it breaks you. This is why I personally do not worry about this trans movement, in the sense that, they're never going to be successful in redefining gender. Okay, they are breaking themselves against the law. They're not breaking the law. Now, I love these people. These are my brothers and sisters, and I care for them, and I want to help them. I'm not quiet on the issue. I don't support it. I don't agree with it, and I speak about the consequences of what they're doing and how it's going to be destructive. But I don't stress over these things. For example, if a fish decides to leave the water, you don't need to kill it. If you uproot a plant from the soil, you don't need to kill it. Laws kill you, or violation of laws kill you. You don't kill law. And somehow, man thinks he's smarter than law. I don't know. We got these Ivy League educated fools sitting in our government discussing laws they can't touch. And they hand them down to our school children while we sit there in our religious meetings, singing these religious songs, having prayer meetings, and doing nothing. And we sacrifice our children on the altar of stupidity dressed in a suit. Law must not be tampered with, because law is a source of value. Make a note of this. Law produces culture. This is the most important statement I'm going to make in this episode, okay, because it relates to values. Laws produce culture. If you want to change the culture of a country, all you have to do is change the laws. This is why the elements in our society who want to change the culture of our communities, they're not even worried about your worship services or your prayer meetings or your conferences. They ignore you. They're going after the politicians who deal with the legislation. They want to change the values of our country, so they go after law. And one by one, for example, we have states collapsing. Look at all these states with stores, getting robbed consistently, people living in the street, departments being overrun, people moving out of certain states, abandoning them because of the violation of law. Interesting. It is the encroachment of cultural transformation. They are changing the values while you sit there. They decide what's valuable. And faith without works is dead. You cannot just sit there and pray for something to happen, and pray for better politicians, and pray for legislative change, and sit at home and do nothing. You have to get involved. You cannot complain about what you allow. You cannot fix what you tolerate. And this is a huge problem with religious people. Not just religious people, but it's a huge problem in general, because we are taught that God is love. And while that is true, the problem is we are taught in society that we must be tolerant. What religion fails to teach you, and what society is trying to guide you toward down this tolerance lie, they don't mention that there are things that are good to hate. There are things that are good to not tolerate. God hates things. For example, God hates idolatry. God hates lying. God hates stealing. There are some things you should not tolerate. If someone breaks into your home and they want to steal everything that you own, would you tolerate that? If someone wants to abuse your wife or your children, would you tolerate that? I would not. I would be very intolerant to that evil, and I would use extreme prejudice against it. So stop believing this narrative that we must tolerate everything, this narrative of love and inclusion. Yes, we're supposed to love people, but we are not supposed to love certain things. We are not supposed to tolerate certain things. Write this down, please. You cannot criticize what you permit, and you cannot oppose what you allow. Your loudest disgrace is your silence. So here's the bottom line. Write this down. Whoever makes the laws creates the culture. This is dangerous stuff. Whoever creates the laws creates the culture. We have groups in our countries called lobbyists. Lobbyists are dangerous people, depending on what they're trying to transform. And most of them, probably all of them, are well-financed because they know that our politicians have no character. So their treasure chest is full. And when they enter the halls of judgment, when they enter the bowels of legislation, they come loaded with money because they know that politics can be bought. And all they're after is changing law. Why? Because we must change the culture. The issues that we are concerned with will soon become culture. Look back 30, 40 years. You could not imagine people would have a problem defining male and female. You could not imagine groups trying to, groom children and have positive, like these people actually believe that you are crazy for not allowing drag shows in elementary school. You couldn't even imagine that. But they're changing laws and they're changing culture. The word culture is an interesting word, and it means to care for and to work on. The Latin is to till, as in till the ground. So when you till ground, what are you doing? You are preparing it to provide and sustain a crop. When you cultivate something, you cannot leave it alone. Cultivation requires attention and effort. Crops require proper care. Children require proper care. What that means is when you have a baby, when it comes out of the womb, it lands in a culture. And the culture grows the child. So if you have a culture of Sodom and Gomorrah and your child comes out and lands in that culture that was prepared beforehand, the culture begins to work on them from the beginning. And then the child reaches 4 or 5 years old and they go to kindergarten, and the school hands them a book about how to have sex and how to give oral sex and how to have gay sex. And they tell the child this is normal. It's interesting if you study Greek and Hebrew. I'm learning a lot from this. The Greek word for law, one of the Greek words, is this word nomos, N-O-M-O-S. There are a number of words, but this one is one that caught my eye, nomos. And it means customs. It means convention. We get customary and conventional from this. We also get the word normal from this. Laws create norms. Have you ever heard that term before? Norms mean that it is normal for 2 women to be married. It is normal for transgender children to mutilate their bodies because they feel a certain way. Why? Because you created a law that permitted it. So your grandchildren may not even think it is strange anymore the way you think it's strange. It will be normal for your grandchild, and they might submit to that law. After all the work you've done to try to be pure and keep the law, your grandchild is in trouble. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here today. This is serious business. So I put it to you that there's some things you shouldn't change in life. Write this down. You shouldn't change principles. You shouldn't change natural law. You should never touch divine precepts. And you shouldn't change truth or roots or foundations. Example, a tree can never outgrow its roots. Have you noticed? Sometimes we think, we don't need any more of these ancient, archaic laws. The Bible is outdated. That is foolish. It's like the tree telling the root, I am tired of you. No matter how tall the tree grows, it is stuck with its roots. It is the root that actually gives the tree life. The fish can never outgrow water. You are never too big to detach yourself from the source of your law. You cannot just decide to change these things. Let me put it another way. No matter how old your house is, it can never outgrow the foundation. The foundation is the law. No matter how many stories you want to add to the house, the foundation determines how many stories you can add. It also determines the safety and the value of your house. If your house is perfect, but your foundation is totaled, your house is actually worthless. You have to tear the whole thing down and start over with the foundation. So law is the foundation of life. It is the key to culture. I'm going to give you another example. No matter how old you are, you can never outgrow oxygen. You can say like, I've been on this earth for 59 years and I'm tired of oxygen. I'm 95 now. I'm tired of oxygen. I want to try something else. Let me redefine life. Have you heard that lately? Redefinition of terms. We will redefine male. We will redefine marriage. We will redefine family. What are you doing? There are some things you can't touch. But we try, and any attempt to adjust natural law or divine law ends in natural destruction. Can I predict the future of our country? It's not difficult. We can never be smarter than truth. Do you know what a prophet is? A prophet is someone who knows the laws. That's basically all, okay? And they kind of assess the environment, and they go, let me predict what will happen to you, okay? I can be a prophet to a fish. Fish, if you come out of water, you shall die. Why? Because I know the law of the fish. So you don't need to argue with those powers in our countries that are trying to reform the law. Just speak loudly about the consequences. That's what a prophet is. Someone who speaks loudly about the consequences of broken law. Ancient laws are always to be used as reference. There are some statements written by some great men, and I want to go over those. Solomon, for example, he says, "Do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors." Solomon is very interesting. His father was David, and David really loved the laws of God, and he taught them to his son. He taught him these values, and Solomon concluded, my father was right. So he's telling his sons after him, don't touch the ancient boundaries. What are we doing right now? We have been tampering with ancient boundaries. I mean, we used to know what marriage meant. We used to know what a family was. We used to know what a male meant and what a female meant. Gender wasn't a question. And we have these Ivy League educated fools testing before governments that they can't define these elementary words. These people got law degrees and doctorates and say, I don't know what a female is. It's insane. Okay? We've got men, biological men, calling themselves women, impregnating biological women, calling themselves men. And then they're raising children in that culture, calling that a family, a normal family. This is ancient meddling. Here's another one I thought was interesting. It's from the prophet Jeremiah. And he says, "This is what the Lord says. You stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. But you said, we will not walk in it." That was written thousands of years ago. Jeremiah is talking to 2023 right now. He's saying, look, your countries are at a crossroads. Your city is at a crossroads. Our government is at a crossroads. And he gives advice. He says, ask for the ancient paths. When you are confused, go back to the root. If you don't know what to do, run back to law. I know you never saw that scripture before because you are too spiritual. Jeremiah concludes. He says, ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. You have to walk in it. And then what happens? You find rest for your souls. When you obey the laws, there is always peace. The red light example. How many of you ever ran a red light or a stop sign? What happens to your body? Everything is changing. all the chemicals, all the hormones, they go crazy. And all of a sudden you start looking around. There's no peace, okay? If you know you're not violating law, you have peace. If you know you're not lying, you don't worry about getting in trouble. If you know you're not stealing, you don't have to worry about these things. Laws guarantee peace. Why is there no peace in our community? Because young people, a lot of them, but even older people, are violating law. What is crime? Violation of law. If we don't understand the power of law and how it relates to character development and values, we will never be successful. Here's another statement by Solomon. It says, "Do not move the ancient boundary stones set up by your ancestors." Don't move them. Don't touch them. The first century leader Paul says, "See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the element of spiritual forces of this world, rather than on Christ." Now, a lot of these Ivy League fools call the breaking of law philosophy. Do not create values or laws or character based on human tradition. They are right now creating values they want to trade to your children. Paul says they do these things instead of keeping the teachings of Christ. Can I suggest to you that we don't even understand Jesus? Jesus was a powerful reminder of law. Let's read his public statement about law. It's in Matthew 5:17. "Do not think that I have come to destroy the law." Why does he say that? Because he knows we're going to think it. Okay? Let me define law for you. Write this down. Original laws are principles. The root word for principle is the word prince, which means source. It means foundation. It means first. So principles are first laws. Why is this important? Because there's some second, third, fourth, and fifth laws that come along after. So when someone says to you that something is a principle, they didn't create that. That's the original one. Laws are original rules. They are foundations. They are inherent. They are natural laws. They are divine laws. And they create standards and they preserve life. As a leader, you must make a decision from this day forward that you will never attempt to violate or tamper with divine or natural laws. Okay, that you will defend them, that you will protect them, that you will die for them. It's very interesting, the statement Martin Luther King Jr. said, he goes, "One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws." Now, religious people have a problem with this because we got some folks going around now emphasizing grace. I warn you, grace does not cancel law. It gives you the right to obey it again. Here's an example. When you are set free from prison, the judge always says, "Do not ever come back to my courtroom." What is he saying to you? He's saying you are free to go out and keep law. So freedom is to obey law. Here's a statement from John 17. "For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." True, but be careful when you use these terms. Grace is not just favor, it is also ability. Grace gives you ability to do what? To keep the truth. What is truth? Original information. Now, for those of you that need proof, let's keep reading. Let's go to Jude 1:4. "For certain individuals whose condemnation was written about long ago have secretly slipped in among you. They are ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into a license for immorality and deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord." Interesting. They use grace to do what? As a license for immorality. The only way to guarantee morality is law. Some of the politicians have lied to you and they said things like you cannot legislate morality. Don't you ever believe that. That is not true. Every law is moral. Every law has moral implications. You cannot make a law that doesn't contain morality. I submit to you, friends, that grace is simply given to keep law. The people walking around saying that the Apostle Paul preached against law show me that they really have not read the Bible and that their theology is messed up. Let's read what Paul wrote. Galatians 5. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. Then they stop reading and they start celebrating. Okay? Don't you love freedom? We're all free. But read the rest of the sentence. He says, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. Paul was advocating to keep law. If you love your brother, you will not steal his material. If you love your brother, you will pay him what he is worth. If you love your brother, you will not tell lies on him. These are all moral activities. It is moral to not steal, but it came from a law. Some people think that love replaces law. I'm going to disappoint you. It does not. I want to ask those people listening today, especially those religious people, how many of you love Jesus? How many of you love Jesus? If you love Jesus, let me quote what he says in John 14. Jesus speaking, if you love me, keep my commands. Jesus doesn't say, if you love me, you will sing songs. If you love me, you won't pray and have prayer meetings. You won't, go to church every Sunday and have worship services. He says, if you love me, you will keep my laws. Law is proof of love, not the cancellation of it. Law is an expression of love. When you tell your children, those of you who have them, do not play in the street, that is the law in this house. Is that love? Absolutely. Is that protection? Absolutely. The kid thinks it's restriction. The child says to you, I can never do what I want to do. And that's exactly right. I love you too much for you to go kill yourself. True law is an expression of love. Peter said these words, 1 Peter 2, live as free people. Go ahead, live. You are free. But do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. We say, I know that grace is available on Sunday, so Saturday I'm going to have myself a good time. Peter is speaking out against that. He is saying you are using grace as a license for Saturday night activities. Okay? It's mind-blowing how we don't live right, but yet we call ourselves Christians and we believe that we have everything figured out. We use it to cover up evil. We use grace to cover up evil. You are never free from law. You are free to keep it. Write this down, please. David says, Psalms 9:7, the law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. There it is again. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. Now, the soul he's talking about here is the mind, the conscience, okay? He says the law of God gives you sense. It makes you wise. It stimulates your conscience, reviving the soul. This is why we hate law, okay? Because law wakes up the soul. That's why we get convicted. That's where it comes from. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise stupid people. Read it. It makes stupid people wise. There are stupid people in our governments who sit and debate things we used to teach kindergartners. Okay? They can't define male or female. We have people with PhDs debating these issues. And these intelligent people are sitting at a table debating foolish things being paid by our tax dollars. It makes wise the simple. The next time you see these politicians supporting these foolish and idiotic things, just shake their hands and say, you are very simple. Law creates value, and values produce ethics and morality. So let's talk about how you are a citizen and how this relates to you. A citizen's responsibility is to obey the laws of the land. Would you agree? I would agree. Anyone who breaks these laws, words of Jesus, he's speaking, and teaches others to break them, is the least in the kingdom of God. the country, not the religion. So you need to be careful. You think this whole grace thing is the issue. It is not. It is law. If you teach people to do what? Stop keeping law, you are a disgrace to the kingdom. We see corruption running rampant all over our governments where, people give contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars to their friends or their family, when their friends or their family have zero experience in whatever field that contract is for. My question is, what laws are they obeying that protects our country from them and from their corruption? Lawlessness in government. That's why we have chaos in our streets. Jesus expects us to keep law. Jesus said, your status in my country is determined by how you keep and teach law, not by how you keep and teach grace. And we've got so much lawlessness in religion, the priests are going to jail. How many scandals have you heard of in the church? The problem is you see it and don't speak up about it. And silence is permission. You cannot criticize what you permit. Speak out against evil. Engage what is wrong. Challenge what is corrupt and be known for challenging it. Leaders are made famous by what they challenge. You are never remembered for your compromises. Write these down, please. Number 1, the foundation of ethics is law. Law is the foundation of character because it is the person who has decided to keep law that becomes a person of character. They are immovable, like a statue. They found some things that they refuse to violate, period. Character means fixed. Number 2, law is the source of culture. Number 3, law is a source of morality. Number 4, all law produces moral implications. Number 5, written and spoken law feeds the conscience. This is why you have to speak law and write law, because sometimes the conscience needs a little bit of help. It's very interesting. If you read the Bible from Adam to Moses, there was no written law. But by the time Moses came around, things were so bad, so out of order, the Creator says, you know something, I need to document this. Their conscience seemed to be dead or sleeping. So he gave them written law to wake up the conscience. Conscience is woken up and aroused by law. Put it this way. This is very important. The more written law a country needs, the more corrupt the country is. The same goes for organizations. If your company or your business needs a policy book that is this thick, your company is corrupt. The more written laws you require is an indicator that your organization or your country is dying. Why? Because the highest form of morality is when the law is burned into your mind, when you are self-governed. Okay, you don't need to be reminded or told of what to do. You do what is right because it is in you. It is a part of your programming. It's in your subconscious. I'm saying some very important things here. If you had to give your CEO a thick policy book to follow in how he negotiates deals so he doesn't scam, cheat, or lie to people, your company is in trouble. Written law wakes up the conscience. Why? Because your conscience has been put to rest by constant violation of law. This is why you start off, it's like the burning, the boiling frog analogy. You always start off doing something small, and little by little, you progress slowly into doing things you never thought you would do. Why? Your conscience is dying. And then when you read the laws about how what you're doing is wrong, you get angry. Consciences never actually die, but you can paralyze it. And conscience is the key to character. You ever hear things like that? Like, you have no conscience. How could you take that money? You have no conscience. How could you treat that person that way? You have no conscience. How could you steal from those people? You have no conscience. How could you pad or lie on that invoice? If I am traveling somewhere and I'm by myself, Let's say that my wife isn't with me and I'm staying at a hotel thousands of miles away, and maybe I'm having dinner in the lobby or in the restaurant there, and a woman approaches me and she wants to get dinner or get drinks. The only safety that I have is my conscience. Conscience is built on character, or character, should I say, is built on conscience. I figured something out over the years. The only person that you sleep with every night is your conscience. And whether or not you have a good sleep or a bad sleep depends on your relationship between you and your conscience. Your conscience can actually give you cancer. It's called stress. Stress activates free radical cells in your body. Now, you can code your cells for cancer, or that same cell can be coded for a cell that creates immunity. The same cell. It depends on the stress you put on it. I'm not saying that everyone who gets cancer doesn't live right, but I promise you it helps. Number 6, conscience is unspoken law. Number 7, law is the source of values. Number 8, law establishes values. So this is where character gets its roots, and you cannot be a good leader. You are disqualified from being a leader if you have no character. Thank you guys. Love you. Until next time. See ya.